Okay, so what are we doing here? We are measuring our fired brass. We're seeing what the chamber dimensions are between our two uppers. And on the upper row here, we have the brass that was fired from our Shaw custom upper. Down below, we have the brass that was fired from our AR Stoner competition upper, which I'm fairly confident was made by Bear Creek Arsenal. On the left, we have Norma. On the right, we have Nosler. And they're measuring very consistently to one another. We already know that the headspace, so the shoulder, the datum line for the two brass is different. The Shaw custom generally has headspace that's about 1,000ths greater or longer, further than my AR Stoner. And that's great because that basically means I don't have to mess with my die at all or buy a separate die to set it up differently. I can just still use the same die for the brass. I just have to be cognizant or I have to keep in mind that, hey, the headspace is going to be 1,000ths difference, however much of a difference that actually makes. Secondly, the other big thing I noticed is with the case mouth here, or the case neck. So the chamber dimensions do seem to be a little bit different. Like, let's see here. And let's see if it focuses. Okay, so now these are not perfectly round. They still do have a little bit of a dent, but you can see where it goes from 253 to 254. I find that's pretty consistent. So basically, the chamber size at the neck for the case is, yeah, basically 253, 254, somewhere in between there. And that's actually smaller than Sammy Spec. If we take this tool at face value, which it does pretty good, it's zeros decently. And when we take a bullet, that is 224, boom, perfect, right on the money, 224. So really, when it comes to cheap calipers like this, like they're going to be very, very close. What's the issue is the linearity of them, but that's getting off topic because it's the accuracy as you move things out. But again, that's babbling. When we go to the Shaw Custom neck, we find that, and you can see right there, oh, right there. Now that we have the glare off of it, 255, which, if I recall correctly, the Sammy specs, and you can see when I turn it a little bit, it does go a little bit greater. Um, that pretty much matches what is the Sammy spec for the chamber. So again, that's if you take this tool at face value. Uh, Now that that does kind of worry me. Well, not with the Shaw. The fact that the AR Stoner one seems to be slightly smaller than Sammy spec. Why do I say that? Well, so the bullet is a certain diameter, 224. The neck thickness is generally about 12 thousandths. So times that by 2, that's 24 thousandths. And then the chamber is 255. I got to do quick math. So you put that all together, there is basically 7 thousandths clearance between the brass and the chamber. That's actually decent. You do want a little bit of clearance in case there's any soot or grit in the chamber, and it just kind of helps with the release of the brass, the expansion of the brass. With this other one, uh, it's not going to be 7 thousandths. It's going to be maybe even 5 thousandths, which, eh, assuming that the chamber might be 253. Anyway, if it is 5 thousandths clearance, I mean, I realize we're talking only 2 thousandths difference, but now we're getting into the point where it might be the danger zone. It could certainly affect things. So I think that that is going to affect things more than the 1,000ths uh, for the headspace. But this is all speculation. How much do I actually know that's going to affect things? I don't. And all this, it could be just worthless information. It could be simply noise. However, I mean, all these differences with the chamber, I mean, that affects expansion of the brass, how the rifle interacts with the brass. That affects combustion. So there are measurable differences that could actually have a practical difference. So that's why I bring it up. Other than that, though, it's just kind of an interesting point of knowledge, I guess. I hope that someone who's viewing this maybe has some input and maybe they can help us learn together. That would be nice. But, like I said, this could be just simply wasted time and effort. This could be wasted noise because 5,000's clearance actually, although that does strike me as a little bit tight, it could be perfectly fine. Uh, but like I said, this is all a learning process, and who knows why exactly they are different. Maybe it's something with the bulk carrier group. Maybe it's as simple as that. Anyway, enough speculation. We just know that our brass does fire form differently. I'm going to reform them now, and well, I guess I'll see you guys out to the range when I load up some more. Welcome back, gentlemen. You could probably hear it a little bit in my voice, but I'm getting over something, probably the flu. I had the chills there for a bit, and I was coughing so bad, I blew some vessels in my eyes, but enough about me. So this is kind of, I guess we'll call it part one of comparing some of my AR uppers. The top row here that we're looking at now, this is from my AR Stoner upper, which probably made by Bear Creek Arsenal. Down below there, which we'll get to, is from Shaw Custom, or ER Shaw, as they were formerly known. Anyway, let's go over it. So, what I have for my load development here, this is the very end. And this is the one I worked up with my AR Stoner upper. So, kind of home team advantage here, we'll go ahead and say. This is with Shooter's World Match Powder with Hornady 75 grain hollow point boat tail match bullets. Wow, that's a mouthful. Anyway, all this is this is doing the fine tuning with seating depth. So we're going from shortest to longest. So this is actually 2.255. So pretty close to, not quite the max, but magazine max. And you can see here vertical stringing. Then here we just got vertical stringing, but things are tightening up. And then here, it's almost a nice tight little group with a little bit of a flyer. I'm not surprised. That could be me. Like I said, like my eyes, they're still kind of irritated. Could also just simply be the bullets, because these Hornady match bullets are not, they're not good. There's a lot of variance to be had there, and I'm having seating depth issues, which maybe I'll go more. Anyway, then, and these are 5,000ths difference, by the way. So 2.255, 2.250, 2.245, and then 2.240, and then the shortest 2.235. And we can see that things kind of tighten up a little bit, but otherwise, yeah, this opened up. Well, previously opened up. So we're probably going towards another node. Okay, so for the ER Shaw, let's actually start the first group. I'm shaking because I'm cold. So this, I think it's interesting that there is some similarities, because this is definitely some vertical stringing. And then we go into something that's a little bit more horizontal. And we notice a trend that there's kind of a 4-shot group that's halfway decent, but then we have a flyer. And this one actually looks pretty decent. Then a flyer all the way over there. In general, the groups are by far worse. But then we get something that tightens up here. So, very interesting. I'm not sure exactly how to interpret that, but I can tell you that the chamber for the ER Shaw is slightly different. I know that the headspace is 1,000ths further up, at least, when measuring from the datum line. How much that affects things, I don't know. I also don't know if there's any change in the rifling. I kind of misspoke. I'm not sure if there's any change from when the bullet will be jamming into the rifling. That's what I mean to say. So that's another variable that's currently unknown. These were just kind of loaded up, and I was like, huh, let's see the difference. But definitely, good job, AR Stoner. And this is basically what we can do for Shooters World Match. And that was actually about the expectations. To me, that looks to be a little under an inch. If that's 0.75, I will be more than happy. I'll take a picture for Range Buddy. I'm gonna have to temporarily, briefly, switch over to voiceover mode because for my first day of testing with this 52 grain Sierra Match King, factory second, by the way, with Shooters World Match powder, I didn't have the luxury of going out to the range and filming like I usually do. It was far too busy, so I had to very quickly run out there, snap some pictures, and I did run them through Range Buddy, so for ease of use for us. And as you can see here, AR Stoner, with just doing the powder workup with a ladder test, I guess you would call it, but really what I'm doing here is an optimum charge weight. It did really well. That third group, 2/3 of an inch, and the point of impact between that third and fourth group end up being fairly similar. Now, for the Shaw Custom, when you take a look at the groups, they are far worse when it comes to just their extreme spread for their end-to-end accuracy. But again, when you look at that third and fourth group on the top row, you see that the points of impact are actually overall quite similar. So what I did here, and this is kind of what you do for a proper optimum charge weight test, you look for those nodes with the point of impact, and from there you try to fine-tune things with seating depth. So that part I do have video of. And so let's get to that part now. Okay, today, gentlemen, we are doing our seating depth tests. It's a continuation of yesterday where we shot Shooters World Match powder with 52 grain match bullets. So we got some interesting results, and you'll see here I was having some issues with my seating die. I was originally going to do in 5,000ths increments, but when I measured them, I don't know where I was at. I'm still kind of getting over a cold. You might be able to tell from my voice, but we went from a 6,000ths jump to 5,000ths to only a 4,000ths. So that's close enough. Let's take a look at the results. So on the top here, because also remember, we're doing a upper comparison here. On the top, I'm trying to keep it consistent. This is the AR Stoner. And on the bottom is the Shaw Custom. And this was our base charge, a replication of what we did yesterday for a pretty good load. And that was 26 grains at 2.222. And you can see here, this looks closer to what we did yesterday than this certainly does. So I'm not sure if it's the weather. The wind is slightly stronger today, but that's for even a 223. That's not going to make a huge difference. The weather, though, I mean, it's about 10 degrees colder, and I cannot speak to the temperature sensitivity of Shooter's World. Anyway, so the next one, you can see the mean radius is definitely better, but we still got this outlier. The group ultimately is about the same size. For the Shaw Custom, though, that is probably about a 1/2 inch. I'll take a picture with Range Buddy and we'll take a closer look. But, wow. So, a total of 10,000ths longer. Misspoke, sorry. So, at 2.233, so 11,000ths. One of these is an overlap. There are 5 shots there. But then here, you can see things kind of open up from what we had previously. It's also a pretty drastic shift in a point of impact, whereas the AR Stoner has been remaining pretty consistent, actually. But then when we get over here, oh, dear God, look at this. It's another drastic shift in the point of impact with a huge outlier, and the same over here. And that's a good 2 inches away. So again, the ones fired there are nasty. So that's definitely a scatter node, I guess we can go ahead and say, when it comes to seating depth, this 2.233. And then when we get to the maximum on the left, that is the Shaw Custom, and then on the right is the AR Stoner. And you can see here we got kind of this double grouping going on, 2 over there and 3, although they both look nice individually. And then right here we got this vertical stringing going on, which is actually I'm wondering if it's tightening up, maybe. I don't know. Well, compared to that, it's definitely tightening up. But where the group is hitting is pretty consistent. So there's still a lot to really say here. I'm going to go back to the bench. I'm going to mull things over. And then I kind of will give my overall analysis soon. That's a good plan. Okay, so we're going to do a matrix load workup with Shooter's World Match powder. And we're switching up the bullets. I used to be using the Hornady 75 grainers, the hollow point bow tail. We're switching over to Sierra Match Kings, although it should be noted these are factory seconds. We're just going to see how well they do, because this is purely off the cuff and really kind of taking a shot in the dark, but still, we're going to graph out visually how this rifle's talking when it comes to loads in terms of both weight graduations of powder, but also overall length, or rather seating depth increments. So there you go. So we're going from shortest to longest, and then from lightest to heaviest. So let's see how well we do, and I'll see you guys in a quick moment. Okay, I have to enter voiceover mode again. So here's an interesting thing to note about this matrix load workup. It's probably the most interesting thing. In the upper right, where we have the bullets seated out the furthest, and it's the lightest charge, so first row for last column, we have a nice tight little core group, but then we have a flyer. When you go up in the charge weight, so the second row, across all the seating depth range that we test, we have a consistent flyer with a nice tight core group. It's a very interesting harmonic occurrence, and it's something that really we would only see with this matrix load workup. This is why they're so handy. We're kind of misusing it here, though. A matrix load workup is really meant for bench rest shooters who fire one caliber, get their barrels from one source, and it's always the same barrel. And really what they're doing is they're trying to tease out the exact same performance from a load workup, or from their cartridge, where they basically use the same components. They might not change out the powders or primers. They're just going, okay, this barrel has some differences from the previous 5 that I owned. Do I need to up my charge by a little bit, a couple tenths of a grain, or just move my seating depth a little bit? Because they're using components that are so similar to what they've always used that they're just fine-tuning really their load. Like, they're not doing crazy load development, basically what I do on my channel. But beyond that, when you look at the rest of this, these groups are largely the same. They're a little over an inch. We can split hairs over things, but even when you look at the mean radius, it's roughly 0.4, a little under half inch. Some are about a third of an inch. But other than that, there's nothing really noteworthy here. It's okay. They're not terrible, but there's nothing great here that we see. Another little interesting occurrence I will point out is that our best groups here, the ones that were in the first row in the middle, and then the final column, the final row, the last row, all the way to the right, they had the best extreme spread, or they had the best accuracy, we'll go and say, but they had the worst mean radius. Just pointing it out. It's slightly snowing. There's a slight breeze, about 5 to 8 miles per hour. This is the Shaw Custom Upper, and I just did my matrix test, mirroring what I did with the AR Stoner with Shooter's World Match and 77 grain Match Kings. This one's a little bit more helter-skelter in a way. So here is the top row. This is all 24.8 grains with 5,000 seating depths different from left to right. You can tell I'm congested. So anyway, we go from kind of a scattered group to horizontal to vertical. So that's kind of nice to see. We see some of that sense that we see with barrel harmonics. Second charge, which is just 25 grains, we see some verticality,
it goes to a group with a flyer to kind of a circular group. Last charge, 25.2. Again, we see kind of a scattered group in the lower left. You'll notice that there's more than 5 bullet holes for this one. That's because there's 2 that should be right there. As an idiot, I'm breaking in a new magazine, so take it for what it's worth. This one's definitely worse, though, and they would have landed somewhere in the middle of all those, so it would have been kind of a diagonal string. Then this tightens up a little bit. This might actually be the best group of all of these. So nothing to write home here, but nothing really terrible. I'm going to just take a picture, run through Range Buddy, meditate upon it, and then we'll see.
There are 2 things I want noted with this matrix load workup, and anyone feel free to chime in too in the comments. But first off, of the 2 uppers for this bullet and powder combination, this matrix has both the worst group of the 2 uppers and the best group. Look at the second row, first column, 2.05 for the group size with the mean radius of 0.6. Oof, rough. But conversely, that last row, the third row, last column, it's our first group that we have under an inch, and there's more to be said about that, but let's not get too distracted. The other thing I want noted is first row, last column, again, similar to the other one, we have this verticality to our group. It's not a tight core group with a flyer, it's one with verticality. When you go to the second row, it's not perfectly mirrored like in the other one, but we do see a general trend that you have a core group with a flyer. So again, harmonically, things are showing up between the 2 barrels, despite all their differences. Really, the things they have in common is that they're both chambered in 223 Wild, and they're both stainless steel barrels. Everything else, the muzzle device, the rifling, is different. So, yeah. I'm going to leave it there. And if other people want to have input on this, I welcome it. Because the worst that could happen is that we all learn together.
Okay, so the top row, along with this one to the left, that's the Shaw Custom. The bottom row with this one to the right, that is the AR Stoner / Bear Creek Arsenal upper. Because it was retailed as AR Stoner, but when you look into things, the design, especially of the flash hider, it's Bear Creek Arsenal. So let's do some group interpretation. Another quick note, 4-shot groups. So first group, this is 22.8 grains of LT32. You got some verticality here and this outlier. This does seem to be a trend that you'll see throughout the groups that we interpret here, because here's the next one, 23 grains. Kind of almost have a core group with this outlier here. Otherwise, it's you could say it's horizontal stringing. Here, this is 23.2 grains. It's generally a shift of the point of impact to the right and core group outlier. This group really explodes out. It's a shift back to the left for point of impact. But this, I think we're entering a scatter node here of some sort, because when we go down to our final group, it looks quite similar, core group, outlier. But other than a slight shift the point to impact right, like it's definitely this charge weight range is probably not anything that my rifle really cares for. And I shouldn't say a slight point to impact to the right. Like that is basically a full ½ inch over. And considering that you already have, this one's already a ½ inch over to the right, I mean, that's quite the shift. Anyway, onto the AR Stoner. In general, it did a lot better. This is definitely under an inch, and this one too. This is kind of this ultimately opened up. It's a point to impact shift up, but core group flyer or outlier. This one here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, I already made note in a video that this round, actually, this very round, this is the one that the base was basically submerged in water. Okay, so some melted snow. Some snow just fell in my tray. Not just. I just picked this up and I felt moisture at the end. I saw a little bit of like slush, some melted snow, and I wiped it off. So if this affects my group, I'm calling mulligan. Like I feel okay doing that because I don't know how long it's been sitting like that, enough for that snow to melt. So yeah. Anyway, back to shooting. So we can disregard that. It is such a grotesque outlier, and the fact that I knew what was going on with my round, yeah, we're disregarding that. Otherwise, things more or less tighten up, and we can see the point of impact goes up slightly. Things are still doing really good though. That's like a half-inch group. We'll have to run it through range, buddy. Here, another half-inch group. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't like this double grouping mechanic they both have. So maybe, well, it's a vertical shift of point of impact. I was thinking that maybe this charge weight range might be a good place to start for further load development, but with the vertical shift, maybe not so much. Anyway, with our final group here, things explode out. It covers pretty much our whole range of point of impact, going from down below here. Like, look at our first group. There. Halfway through that dark circle. Look here. A little bit below halfway that dark circle. Like, yeah. And then it goes all the way up where some of the other shots went as well. Actually, a little bit higher, because our through group here gets into that center ring. This one, it's getting a little bit higher than that even. So the fact that it's a crescent shape as well, I mean, I think there's another node beyond that, but we're getting into the very maximum charge. The brass does look kind of fine. The primers are a little bit like they're I'm scared to get to that maximum range. Long story short, like, could we eke out some accuracy? Sure, but at that point we're really punishing our brass because our primer's already starting to show it. They're not cratering. I'm not really getting a smear, but still, this is a very fast burning powder. I don't want to risk it. But either way, definitely the very high range, it doesn't really care for, even if we have just a little bit of room. This, I think, is where kind of we're supposed to be. Someone's calling me on my phone. So overall, I mean, what do we say? What do we do here? Like, is this a definitive comparison between the two uppers, the two brands? No. I've done a couple other tests. I'm going to include them in this video. I'm going to consider it, I guess, part 1. I want to test more powders for sure, because the bullet weight range, I think we got down pretty good. 52 grains all the way up to 77. In general, the Shaw Custom does seem to prefer the lighter bullets. This is actually one of the few times that the AR Stoner, or Bear Creek Arsenal, has edged out against it. But I'm not complaining too much. I mean, with half-inch groups, one could say I'm getting kind of spoiled here, actually. But, yeah. So, I'm going to put these videos together, finally put out that comparison, and we'll just go from there. See you guys out in range.